Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. We've seen the Warzone metas change a lot since launch. Obviously, we had various Modern Warfare metas. We've had various Cold War metas, some different long range metas, some different close range metas. Today, we're focused on that, the new close range meta here in Warzone, because we've seen a handful of different changes recently. Obviously, the main one being that Modern Warfare MP5 nerf that we got a few days back. I've seen a lot of players asking, Zach, is it still worth using the MP5? Are there better alternatives? So today we're going over what I think are the best weapons to be using for close range fights as secondaries with snipers, as secondaries with other rifles and whatnot, the close range meta as it currently stands. So if you enjoy the video or if you find it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it. Would be seriously appreciated. It really does help grow the channel. And of course, if you're new to the channel or if you haven't already subscribed, feel free to do so. That way you can always stay up to date with the latest metas, news, updates, and really everything else going on in Call of Duty. So the first weapon I want to look at is going to be the new Tec9. Obviously, we got this with the whole Season 5 update, and this is a surprisingly unique weapon because obviously you can use it as a fully auto SMG, a burst SMG, or a semi-auto SMG. Regardless of where you use it, it's going to be pretty efficient, especially for close range fights. It has really good mobility, and it's actually relatively powerful. Its TTK is very impressive, especially like semi-auto. If you're able to just master your trigger finger and spam this gun, it is going to kill very, very fast. So it's a fun weapon to use, a bit of a harder weapon to use depending on how you want to go about it. But honestly, when it comes down to the setup here, I think using that fully auto repeater is a way to make it very easy to use and a way to make it very consistent for close range fights. So when you're using this as a fully auto weapon, it absolutely fills the void in that close range meta. Of course, because it is a Cold War sub, we're going for the Task Force barrel. I also like to go for the Tiger Team Spotlight. I like that mobility. A lot of players will honestly favor this over something like a grip because really you're fighting close range. It's Call of Duty. The recoil is very manageable and very easy to contain. So you don't always need to use an underbarrel. I like to go for like the 48 round mag here. The speed mag, not entirely necessary. The smaller magazine, you're going to run out of ammo a bit too fast. So 48's a nice medium ground there. You don't lose that ADS time, and overall it stays pretty consistent. And lastly, we do go for either no stock, the combat stock, or the final stock. I don't even have the Raider stock unlocked yet because it's not entirely necessary on a setup like this. No stock with that added sprint to fire works just fine. The combat stock with that better strafing speed is also very efficient. Really, any of the final three stocks there are a solid option when it comes to the Tec9. Now, a weapon that I'm honestly still surprised is as good as it is close range is the Cold War AK47. This thing has been a beast for quite some time. I would not be surprised if they ended up nerfing the close range damage on this thing because statistically, it's actually one of the best options in the entire game for fights in between like 0 and 25 meters. Honestly, the AK's TTK across all ranges is incredibly fast because it is a bit harder to use. It is a tad bit slower, and obviously it's got some more recoil than some of these other weapons, so that's something you have to factor in. But for close range fights, this thing is a beast, probably the best sniper support in the game right now, I would say. First up, we are going for just the basic regular suppressor. You don't have to use the GRU on this one because obviously it's going to slow you down a bit. And with a weapon like this, it's already pretty slow. Just the base suppressor giving you that better mobility and keeping you off the radar is actually going to be pretty beneficial. For a close range based build, you do not need a barrel. You could definitely run one, like the ultralight would be certainly viable here, as would a Liberator. I wouldn't recommend RPK on a close range fight whatsoever. So I would say either Liberator or Ultralight if you wanted to run a barrel, but you really don't need one for close range engagements. Entirely unnecessary. Instead, we're once again going for the Tiger Team Spotlight. That's going to be a big help there. I do like to run the Spetsnaz grip for some added recoil control because, like I said, this thing is a bit more bouncy and harder to control than some of the other weapons. So that's just going to help out keeping your shots on target. Obviously, we do want to add a magazine on there. 45 round, I feel like is sufficient for close range fights. You could go 60, but it's going to slow you down some. So I stick with just the basic 45. And then for the final attachment, you can sort of mess around. I know quite a few people like to go for the GRU elastic wrap. Others don't really like the iron sights. I feel like for close range, they work just fine, but you can go for something like the quick dot LED or the microflex LED. Or you could go for something like the skeletal stock and get you some better ADS time. I think personally, I'm a big fan of the GRU elastic wrap. Make that ADS a bit snappier, especially with the suppressor on there. This thing is really, really good for playing very aggressive and definitely fills that void in that close range meta. Now, like I said at the start, I've been getting asked about the MW MP5 a lot. Zach, is it worth running still? Is it still good for close range fights? Yes, it is still good. No, it's not going to be as good as it was before because obviously they did reduce the damage on it a bit. But I think when it comes down to it, at max, it is 2 shots more to kill than before, which really is not a huge deal. 2 extra shots per fight. I mean, that's really nothing when it comes down to it. It is a slight nerf, but not one that's going to drive the MP5 into the ground. And for that reason, we're still pretty much running the same setup as before. We go for the monolithic integral suppressor because it is better than just the basic monolithic. I like to go for the Merc foregrip. You get some insane hip fire accuracy because of that. Of course, we're running the basic 45 round mags. The 10 mil 30 round is just not enough to compete in duos, trios, quads. It's just not enough ammo. I also go for sleight of hand because I do like to use this as like a super aggressive SMG. Then finally, I go for the collapsible stock. You get some better mobility on there. You could swap out one of those for the Stippy Grippy if you wanted to. You could use the 5mm laser if you wanted to. But this setup, in my opinion, is probably the go-to and the best MW MP5 setup there is right now. Now, staying on the trend of MP5s, the Cold War version is still incredibly good up close. Yes, it does have quite a bit of recoil, so you do have to help manage that. You got to work towards getting that pattern down. But once you do that, this thing is incredibly good still. It does drop off pretty severely around that 12-meter mark, but for close range fights, for an ultra aggressive SMG and for an ultra aggressive close range weapon, the Cold War MP5 works very well, especially if you can land a couple of headshots in that fight. You're going to melt players left, right, and center. First up, we do go for the agency suppressor. It's going to extend that range a little bit, which you could definitely use on the MP5 right now. I don't go for a barrel here. You could go for task force, but it's going to hurt the recoil even more, and I just don't feel like that's super necessary all the time. The weapon's already difficult enough to use for quite a few players. No sense in making it more difficult. Instead, we're going for the Tiger Team Spotlight. Instead of that barrel, we do actually go for a bruiser grip. In my opinion, is the way to go. Better movement speed, better hip fire accuracy. A lot of players would prefer the field agent though to help control that recoil, and that works totally fine as well. I just like the bruiser for my you know, that extra speed and my aggression and that overall play style. I like to use that on there instead. We're going for the 50 round drum, pretty basic there. Then finally the Raider stock, almost the copy and paste Cold War SMG setup, just no barrel and instead an under barrel to help out where you see fit, either better mobility or better control. Then we've got the lone shotgun on the list today, the Gallo. Yes, the Street Sweeper is still very good, but I just prefer the Gallo. I like not having to reload for 19 years, and it just feels more consistent than the Street Sweeper to me. I was expecting to have the Marshall on this list, but then it dropped, and it was just so much suck that it's not even worth running or mentioning here. So originally, when I thought of this video idea, I was like, okay, we're probably going to be covering the Marshall and some of the subs, but lo and behold, that gun is trash. This is the shotgun you want to be using. The Gallo is still very good. We're going for the agency choke first and foremost, keeping us off the radar, extending that velocity and range a little bit. I like to go for the reinforced heavy barrel, better fire rate, so you can spam this more, and it helps out with the range a bit as well. Of course, because it's a shotty, we are hip firing a ton, so the 5mm laser is a must-have here. It's going to make you way more accurate from the hip. I like to go for the larger magazine. You just have to reload less, which to me is a huge bonus, especially when the reloads here is still very slow. It's not Street Sweeper slow, but it's still pretty slow. Then finally, we go for no stock. We get some better mobility out of that. All around, a super consistent, great close range weapon here with the Gallo. And then finally, we've got my favorite weapon in the game right now, the OTS9. This is the best close range SMG, just hands down. It's the best. The TTK is insane. Its mobility is phenomenal. Like all around, you can't go wrong with the OTS. I've been loving this thing lately, and I'm sure you guys know this this setup by now because we've been covering it and talking about it for a little while now. Groove suppressor first and foremost, task force because obviously it's a Cold War sub, we're always using that. Tiger Team Spotlight for better mobility. We go for the 40 round fast mag because that ADS reduction really is not too bad, and that reload is incredibly quick. Then for the last attachment, you can sort of mess around. I really like the Serpent Wrap. It just feels very consistent, and I like the snappiness on that ADS, but a lot of players will also like to use no stock or the skeletal stock or even the Spetsnaz stock. You could go for any of those or the Serpent Wrap. It's going to be very good and very consistent for close range fights. This is my favorite SMG, my favorite close range setup right now though, just because it is so reliable and so dominant in this current meta. Fantastic setup. All these work really well, but this one in specific is definitely my favorite. That's going to wrap things up for today. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, let me know by dropping a like on the video. Would be seriously appreciated. And of course, if you're new here or if you haven't already subscribed, feel free to do so. That way you can always stay up to date with everything going on in COD. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy. Have an awesome rest of your day. And I will catch you guys later. Peace out.